Welcome back to Fishing with Vance. Well, it is a cold, rainy day here in November in western Pennsylvania. So won't be doing any fishing off the bank today or the Pelican. So today we'll be doing a product review. And actually it's a comparison. I'll step over here. It's going to be a review and a comparison between the Minn Kota Endura Max and the Minn Kota Endura C2. So, where do we start? First, let me start by saying this is not a paid review or comparison from Minn Kota. This is just my experience, having bought several of these. I believe this guy was motor number 5 from Minn Kota. I had an old school one 25 years ago with a whole metal shaft. I don't even have it anymore. Wish I had a picture of it even, but it was an old school one. It lasted 20 some odd years, 25 years, so they don't make them like that anymore, unfortunately. But like I said, this is my fifth Minn Kota trolling motor that has powered pretty much the Pelican Bass Raider there and me for the last several years. So, all right. So let's do a basic comparison. And this motor over here is another Endura Max, but we'll get into that in a second. All right, so the big differences between these, let's start with the Endura Max since it's the later model. Now, the Endura Max has additional features that the regular C2 does not have. Let's talk about the differences, because the similarities are pretty easy to see. The handles are the same, the clamps are the same that mount to the transom. Those are basically the same apparatus. If you look down below, this one is a size 55, this one is a size 50 in terms of pounds of thrust. So let's talk about the Endura Max. So it has, if you look up here, you guys that have been shopping for these or looking at them, it has some additional features on top. It has this battery tester that you can press this button and tell you how much battery life you have left. I personally did not use that much at all. I maybe a few times. I typically fish about in between, 3 to 4 hours is my normal time, and I never run out of battery life. And 4 hours back in the day, I used to maybe go a little longer, maybe 6 hours, and I have never ran out of battery power if I did the right thing and charged the battery the night before like you're supposed to. So I really never, the point is, I never really used this digitizer to read out, the battery tester. So some of the other features that this thing has, it has the digital maximizer for battery life. And again, like I just said, I really never noticed a big difference between the Endura Max and the Endura. They both will run, like I said, 4, 5, 6 hours. And that's not continually running it. I generally fish for bass. So you are, on a windier day, you are playing with that motor to keep yourself in position. I do not use an anchor. So I'm constantly moving around in the boat and moving up and down the shoreline like everybody else. I'm not running them wide open for very long periods of time. I don't fish in huge lakes. So, the lakes I fish in are under 10 acres. And so really going from one side to the other, there's not a whole lot of wide open running time. So just kind of know that as we go through the review. I'd say the biggest difference in these is the method of how the control. You have your variable speed control on this one. And so, this is percentage. I don't know if you can see that. I'll go plug them in a minute and show you. But the variable speed, this is nice when it's working because if you're trying to hold in a spot, maybe you have wind blowing towards you, you can really set just a small amount to just hold you on a spot if you have a little wee bit of wind. It is nice to have when it's working. And this variable speed here is also good if you're just like I said, just trying to get at a specific speed up and down the bank. I don't troll. I tend to pitch to shallow areas for my bass. I do not use it as an actual trolling motor per se, whereas guys use it to troll for walleye or striper or whatever else. I don't use it that way. I use it pretty much to keep myself in position. But the variable speed, it is nice, again, when it's working. So we'll get to that. All right. Whereas in the Endura, you have designated speeds. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I will say I don't notice it so much whenever I'm just trying to hold in a spot. Generally, one of these positions will hold you good enough in a spot if you're facing wind and you just want to kind of hold against a slight wind. Any of these gears will work fine. I'd say on the negative side on this, in terms of the gears like this or specific speeds, I don't notice a whole lot of difference between speed 1 and 2. And 3 you'll get a little bit, you'll start to notice, and then 4 you'll definitely notice. But one thing I don't like about it is when you go between fourth and fifth gear, you'll get a jump, like a pop. I wish I would have filmed this out on the boat to show you, but when you go to put that in between fourth and fifth gear, it really boosts it and almost like a jerk motion. It sort of takes off a little bit. So the speed difference between fourth and fifth gear is not a smooth transition the way gear 1 through 4 is. However, even though it has the gears and not the variable, it always works. All right, so we'll get into that as we go through my comparison and my review. From a weight perspective, this is size 55, 50, and this guy is a 44. He's sort of odd. I got him at Dunham's, and I don't see this anymore. It's usually 40 or 45. So 44 is sort of, I don't know, maybe they stopped making it. But it's also Endura Max and has the variable drive. Now, from a weight perspective, I was starting to say, this one weighs 26 pounds. This one weighs 20 pounds. I weighed it myself with my carp scale. And this guy weighs 17 pounds. So the size of the heads are pretty, you can tell this guy's pretty beefy in the Endura Max. That's why it weighs a little bit more. For me, I have found, and let's talk about speed, because that's a big component of speed versus the weight, is pushing this boat around. These Pelican Bass Raiders all weigh about 150 pounds or something along those lines. And then by the time you put me in it, and sometimes if I have a second guy, we're pushing around all the 500 pounds at least. And I do have a lithium battery. It's took some weight off the boat, but let's just call it, for sake of discussion, it's pushing around 500 pounds. So from a speed perspective, I really do not notice any difference wide open between really any of these. If you could believe it or not, they all push it around maybe between 3 and 4 miles an hour, fully loaded. With me in the boat, I'm a bigger guy, and even if I take Catter or Penner or any of my fishing partners, we really don't notice much different. If I'm in the boat by myself, it will push it around 3.5 miles an hour from point A to point B wide open. And that's for all three. I really don't notice a big difference. You would think this big 55 guy that he would really push that boat fast, but all things being equal, weight is the same. I don't notice much difference. So there's really not that. And maybe it goes from 3.5 miles an hour down to 3 miles an hour. But again, these things aren't really built for speed. They're built to move you around, into various spots so you can get at the bass or the fish, whatever you're going for. So the weight, though, is significant for me. Somebody that has a bad back, I take this on and off my Pelican every single time. We use these Anderson connectors, and they are super nice. So that way you can leave your battery on the boat, and it's just a matter of unconnecting the Anderson connector, so to speak, taking the trolling motor off, throw it in the back of the truck, and off you go. You don't have to take the battery all off and disconnect it and all the battery leads and all that good stuff. It's a great mod. If you've never seen that mod, I'll leave a link in the description of all my product reviews, actually my Pelican Bass Raider modifications, and you can see where we put those on. I would recommend the Anderson connector for any kind of trolling motor that you're using, especially if you're going to leave the battery on and take the trolling motor off whenever you're done fishing. All right, so to sum up, what I'm trying to say is the weight is important to me because I got to take this thing on and off. And in some places where I'm fishing, it's not the most perfectly level, stable ground that you kind of, if there's no dock and you're just sort of running the Pelican there, into the bank, so to speak, then, to lift it up back onto that caravan trailer, I want as little weight on the boat as possible. So I take this off. And so the weight has become important to me since there's no difference in speed. So take that for whatever it's worth. If I could do it all over again, I will not buy any more of the bigger 55s. The only reason I bought this 50 was because I couldn't find anything. I got it at Dunham's when this one broke, when the 44 stopped working, which we'll talk about. I was done buying Endura Max, and so I went back to the C2. And actually, my son has the other C2. He has a 55-pound C2, and it's still working just fine. So that's the only reason I went with a 50. If I do it again, I would actually drop down all the way down to a 30 just to move me around, and it'd be nice and light to get it on and off the boat. So, for whatever that's worth. All right, so let's talk about the main issue that I'm having with these motors. Both my Endura Maxes have both broken. They both have the same exact issue, and that is that they will not turn off or turn on sometimes. I'll show you a demonstration in a second. When I was checking this out, when I put both of these on the stand, I plugged them both in, and this Endura Max just did what it was doing at the lake, which was as soon as you plug it in, and even though the setting is on off, it just runs. And what I'd have to do at the lake is kind of turn this back and forth to try to get this to stop doing it. And it got to the point where I couldn't get it to stop, and I would take 20 minutes at the dock trying to get the motor to shut off or warm up or do whatever it needed to do in order for it to, the controller would actually work. The other downside is sometimes I'll be out there fishing, and this was very unsettling. I'd be fishing with it in the off position, and I sit down for the most part when I'm on the Pelican. Sometimes I stand up, and it would just take off. It would just engage on its own and just go. Even though it was in the off position, it would just run. And this one did that, and so did the other Endura Max. So it got to the point where I couldn't use them anymore. It wouldn't shut off without unplugging the Anderson connector every time we wanted to stop. And that doesn't work if you're trying to fish, and you guys know if you're maneuvering a boat with a trolling motor on even a slight windy day, you're on this handle quite a bit to get in position. So I went away from the Endura Max and I went back to the C2 because, like I said, my original C2, 55 pound, it's probably 7-8 years old. It's still working fine. I gave it to my son for his Pelican, and this new one, it works perfectly fine. Now, full disclosure, in kind of prepping for this video, I was going out and just grabbing different specs. These are both the same. They don't look it, but they are the same. These are both 36. shaft, I should say. In doing the preparation to get some information, I ended up contacting Minn Kota, and they were fantastic. When I told them the circumstances of both the Endura Maxes, they told me, hey, this thing is going to need a new control board and head assembly, which is essentially this bottom part. This whole entire bottom section of the motor needs replaced. And they were super nice about it, and they sent me one. They said I was a good customer, and I'd bought so many motors. And so they ended up sending me one. And here it is. Just came in the mail. So I'll be throwing that on the 44 repair with the new lower unit. So thank you to Minn Kota. I do appreciate that. I think it's fair to mention that Minn Kota did work with me, even though I think they do have issues with this Endura Max, and I think they know that. If you look online, you'll see I'm not the only one that this lower unit needs replaced. As far as overall these motors, though, what I like about them, don't like about them, I do like they are pretty tough. Like, I'll run these in the rocks and things, and they hold up pretty well in that light. Like I said, both these shafts are 36. The way that they attach to the transom, these are pretty nice, pretty sturdy, no issues with them, nothing is broken on them. I'll say the same thing I said on the last review. If you haven't seen my other review on the Minn Kota motor, I don't like this, the way that this that you raise and lower the motor, because what happens all the time to me, I'll get on the lake and you're going to drive in and you want to raise the motor quickly. I don't know if I can do it with one hand, but you go to press this button and try to raise it quickly, and you can't because of where this happens to be. You have to make sure that this control is off to the side like I have it here, so that would work. But somehow every time I get out there, or oftentimes I get out there, this thing gets moved or whatever. You go to quickly put it up, and this button hits here. So I don't like how that is designed at all. The old motor used to have a button that you pushed, and when you push that button, it disengaged the motor from this housing back here. So the new design I do not care for, no matter what. I can't really do it too well with one hand, but this always ends up in the way, at least for me. So I don't like that new apparatus. All right, so let me plug these both in, and I'll see if we'll see if this guy wants to work today. The 44 has completely stopped working. I plugged it in earlier, and it won't do anything at all. So it's completely a dead soldier until we put the new unit on it. But let me shut the camera off. I'll wheel it over there, and we'll plug it in. All right, I went to plug it in into my Anderson connector here. It goes here into here. And even though the motor's on off, it will immediately start running. So bear with me on this. So you can hear the motor running as a result of me just plugging in the connector. So there it is. See, it's running. And it's in the off position. So what I'd have to do at the lake is kind of play with this thing. Well, it's not going to stop for us. So this is exactly why I had to stop using it, because I get to the lake and it wouldn't stop. Sometimes throwing it forward and reverse would get it to stop, but it won't. It's still running. So let me just unplug it. And that's the only way to get it to stop. So again, I don't want to beat up Minn Kota, but both Endura Maxes are doing this, and they both need new lower unit control boards. All right, so that's that demonstration. Let me plug the C2 in, and obviously it's not running. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So that's reverse. And there's speed 3 reverse, it runs pretty good, and it will move the boat around in reverse. I tend to fish in reverse a little bit if I'm backing into a spot. Let me turn it back off, and it does stop. So here's first, here's second. Again, not much difference. I don't feel much difference on the water. There's third. I tend to not even use first, second, and third gear. Maybe third a little bit. Here's fourth. And then here's that jump I was talking about. Here's fourth to fifth. And then it really goes in fifth. So, but overall, it works fantastic. And I haven't really had an occasion where the gears stopped me from holding the boat in any position I wanted. And that's why I went away from the Endura Max, because like I said, they both broke on me. Alright, so that's pretty much going to do it for this review of these two motors. So there you have it. The Endura Max versus the C2 from Minn Kota. Overall, I think it's not worth the money for the Endura Max, of course, because both of mine broke. Even though Minn Kota did replace the unit for me, I appreciate it. But I still wouldn't go with the Endura Max at this point. I would probably go with the C2. I don't think the push-to-test battery is worth it. The variable speed is nice, but it's still not worth it, especially for me. It is an expensive part to replace. The weight is really negligible between the 50 and the 55. I don't see, from an amperage draw perspective, the 44 draws 42 amps, and both the 50 and the 55 both draw 50 amps. I didn't notice a difference in battery life between the Endura Max and the Endura. I'm sure if I did an official test and just ran them full bore on water, hopefully the Endura Max would last longer. That's the whole point, I think. That and the variable drive. The price, the Endura Max is more money. Between, you can get them for $300, and the C2s are still only about $250. So overall, and the speed is the same. You can't really notice a difference, the overall speed. So having said that, I would get, and I just did this past season, bought another C2. So hope this video helped you. I hope the video comparison helped you. If you have any questions, definitely write a comment, and I will be happy to answer it as best I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer. But that's been my experience having 5 different Minn Kota motors. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Stay tuned for whenever I replace that head unit, and I'll show you how that goes. And also check out the playlist of all my other product reviews for anything I've ever used. No product review is paid by anybody. It's just stuff that I use to fish. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Fishing with Vance. Fish on.